With today seeing the largest single-day increase in global cases of coronavirus, with more than 93,000 Americans now having lost their lives and states reopening with new cases still rising, and a majority of Americans from both parties saying they'd prefer going slow, you would think that the president would be concerned about this and this alone. You might think he would feel the weight of the responsibility he has for 350 million Americans' lives, or then you might look at his Twitter feed. Quoting now, "Crazy Bernie Sanders is not a fighter. He gives up too easy. The Dem establishment gets Alfred E. Newman, Mayor Pete, and Amy Klobuchar to quit and endorse Sleepy Joe before Super Tuesday and gets Pocahontas to stay in the race." Now, if you're counting, that's 3 schoolyard names, 1 ethnic slur, all in a single tweet. There's also this one that's also a twofer, maybe a threefer. Quoting again, "Roger Stone has been treated very unfairly. How about that jury forewoman? Does anybody think that was fair? Disgraceful. Stay tuned." And guys like low-rating psycho Joe Scarborough are allowed to walk the streets, open cold case. That's the President of the United States, the chief executive, in the middle of a pandemic, defending a convicted felon and a former fixer and attacking a juror for doing her civic duty. Then, after using a slur to anyone with mental illness or caring for someone who may be suffering from mental illness, the president repeats his thinly veiled allegation against Joe Scarborough committing murder. We won't elaborate on the allegation, only to say it concerns a former congressional aide who collapsed from a heart arrhythmia. She hit her head and died. That is what the medical examiner in the case determined. Authorities never suspected foul play. It is not a cold case. To say otherwise is not only a slur on Joe Scarborough, it's being utterly heartless to this woman's family and to her memory. But that's what the president found time to do today. He also promoted conspiracy theories about the former administration, and yes, he did tweet a bit about the pandemic. Some of it was routine, some of it not. He tweeted, and I quote, "Michigan sends absentee ballot applications to 7.7 million people ahead of primaries in the general election. This was done illegally and without authorization by a rogue Secretary of State. I will ask to hold up funding to Michigan if they want to go down this voter fraud path." Sent a similar tweet, by the way, about Nevada. The issue is not really that everything he said in them is factually false. It is. The important part is his threat to withhold funding from the states if they don't do his bidding. And late today, a senior administration official left that threat hanging, telling CNN, quote, "No decisions have been made at this time. Discussions are ongoing." Does the words, "I want you to do us a favor," though, does that ring any bells? Seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? So there's that, and there's also this. Military members, they vote by mail. So do students. So do entire states, which only do mail-in voting. So does the President of the United States.
But the president himself has voted just 2 months ago by a mail-in ballot. There are several Republican states that are also doing these mail-in applications for ballots. And so I'm confused. What is it that he thinks is illegal that's happening in Michigan? He doesn't really specify.
So first, with regard to the president doing a mail-in vote, the president is, after all, the president, which means he's here in Washington. He's unable to cast his vote down in Florida, his state of residence. So for him, that's why he had to do a mail-in vote. But he supports mail-in voting for a reason. When you have a reason that you are unable to be present.
Perspective now from CNN's Caitlin Collins, who asked that question, and CNN chief political correspondent Dana Bash. Caitlin, first of all, what do you make of Secretary McEnany's response? Because it seemed, ironic coming from the president, first of all, who goes to Florida quite often. I'm wondering what you made of the response.
Well, I don't think it's surprising that the president votes by mail. Of course, he doesn't live in the state that he now calls home, Florida. But the point overall was that the president cannot vote there. But people and their concern in these states and why we're seeing this move in toward mail-in ballots and the applications that are happening is because people are concerned about what it's going to look like when there are primaries and when the general election happens in November. It's not just November that is a concern for some of these secretaries of state. It's primaries that are happening before then, and whether or not people should be standing in line close to each other for hours on end waiting to vote, if depending on where we are, what progress has been made about the pandemic so far. So that's why it was so notable seeing the president go so hard after Michigan today, when you've seen Georgia's Secretary of State also make similar moves. And of course, the Secretary of State in Nevada is a Republican. They're moving to an all mail-in voting for their primary over the summer. So that was the question. He's only singling out certain states like Michigan. And later in the cabinet room, he tied it directly to polling, talking about a battleground state in Michigan, saying he just got new polling in that he says has him up in Michigan. So making clear there is certainly a political aspect to this.
Dana, what is the political calculation for the president here?
It's so incredibly transparent. I mean, that is what is consistently remarkable about this president is that he doesn't hide what he's doing. I mean, he is, in a way that we used to have
He
to
says the
peel
quiet
back
stuff out loud.
Always. We always historically have had to peel back the onion, what's really going on inside the White House. He does it on Twitter. And today he did it in an extraordinary way, given the amount of time that he used, a minimal amount of time to really explode against a whole range of people, as you said. The thing about Michigan and Nevada, which he didn't mention, as Caitlin said, is that it is a belief, a strong belief in the president's political orbit that if there are mail-in ballots, the Democrats will do better and Republicans will do worse. That is the political belief. That is why he said what he said. Not just that. I remember Anderson talking to one of the president's friends as this was beginning, one of those weeks where he was really going at it with the governors. And this person said, the governors better be careful because this is a guy who will withhold money to especially blue state governors or governors he doesn't like if they continue to push back against him. And there we have it. That's exactly what he did today.
Caitlin, I mean, it seems to me the president could basically just using his usual playbook, pick an enemy, distract from what is going on, certainly with the pandemic, the death toll, and just focus on something which he's focused on before, which is conspiracy theories about voter fraud. You know, he still is claiming there were, millions of people voting illegally in California, millions of illegal immigrants voting against him and voting for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, these are two of the tactics you see the president use often when something that he doesn't like happens. He threatens to withhold funding or he says whatever is happening is illegal. He did both of those today when it comes to Michigan, though later when he was pressed and when the White House press secretary was pressed, which funding is he considering withholding, the president did not answer, neither did the press secretary, and he even said, he doesn't think he's going to have to withhold funding after all. And they tried to craft this excuse that he was actually just sending a message to the Office of Management and Budget Director, who the press secretary said and acknowledged that the president had seen today. So why would he need to tweet to send that message? Of course, withholding funding is another thing the president has threatened before when it comes to sanctuary cities, when it comes to NATO. You've seen it time and time again, not just with Michigan today. And the question is, we're even seeing it right now with the WHO, the World Health Organization, play out. Oftentimes, the president doesn't always follow through on those threats. So that's the question here, is this just a political tactic? Is he being serious and he's going to withhold funding through a state going through the pandemic pretty severely right now? And the White House wasn't able to really give a lot of details on that today.
And Dana, I mean, he clearly sees a political advantage in going after Michigan, repeatedly the governor of Michigan as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, it makes you think as a political observer, particularly of the map, whether or not he's doing this because he thinks Michigan is a goner or because this is the best way in that critical state was critical for him in 2016. He wouldn't be president without winning Michigan in a very surprise victory there. Or is it because he sees the protests, he understands that the only way that he has a chance there is to get the base out plus whatever voters are out there that might have come his way or at least stayed home 4 years ago and might be interested in voting for him if they don't like the governor. I mean, those are the calculations that go through his mind. But I really do think, having said that, in this particular case, it's a twofer. The governor has made him mad because she is on TV a lot criticizing him and the administration. In many ways, she has a point because she was looking for important materials to fight the pandemic that she didn't get at the beginning. And then number two, she's in the running to be the potential running mate for Joe Biden. And look, I mean, she is a woman of power, and we have seen the president go after women of power, especially in the other party.
Yeah. Caitlin Collins, Dana Bash, thanks very much.